Picture a child sitting at a dinner table. He isn't eating. He is watching his father's jaw muscle clench. He is listening to the specific pitch of his mother's sigh. He is calculating, with the precision of a bomb disposal expert, exactly what he needs to say, or more importantly, what he needs not to say, to keep the peace for one more hour. He learns that if he is quiet enough, if he is perfect enough, the explosion won't happen. Fast forward 30 years. That child is now running a department. He is now managing a marriage. On the surface, he is the most reliable person in the room, but biologically, he is still that boy at the table, convinced that his very existence is a disruption that must be apologized for. This is the clinical reality of the emotional janitor. You are the person who fixes things. In your family, in your workplace, perhaps even in your marriage, you are the stabilizer. You are the one who reads the room the moment you walk in, scanning for tension the way a soldier scans for landmines. You pride yourself on this. You call it high emotional intelligence. You call it resilience. But there is a clinical reality underneath that hypercompetence that we rarely discuss. To understand why you are so exhausted at 40, despite having checked every box of success, we have to look at a blueprint that was drawn decades ago. We have to talk about a psychological profile that doesn't always look like abuse, but feels like an erosion. We need to talk about the psychology of the intruder. Most people recoil at the term the hated child. It sounds melodramatic, like something out of a Dickens novel involving orphanages and gruel. You likely don't identify with it because you had a roof over your head, vacations, and perhaps even paid tuition. But in-depth psychology, hate isn't always active malice. It isn't always shouting or violence. The most damaging form of rejection is actually ambient. It is the subtle, pervasive energy that suggests your existence is an interruption rather than a joy. It is the sigh when you enter the kitchen. It is the stiffening of the air when you speak. It is the distinct biological reality of growing up as an inconvenience. So, let's look at the mechanics of this. How does a child who is treated as an intruder become the adult who conquers the world but feels like an imposter in their own skin? It begins with a fundamental misunderstanding of what a child actually needs. We assume the baseline requirement for a human infant is safety, food, shelter, warmth. But biologically, the baseline is belonging. For a developing nervous system, connection is not a luxury. It is the prerequisite for regulation. When a child sits at the dinner table and realizes that their silence buys them safety, they make a subconscious calculation. If I am quiet, I am safe. If I am invisible, I am accepted. This is where the first structural error in your psyche occurs. You begin to confuse disappearing with behaving. And here's the reveal that explains your current anxiety. When love is withheld or replaced with subtle resentment, a child does not simply feel unloved. That would be manageable. Unloved is a condition. It is a temporary state of affairs. Instead, the child feels unworthy. And unworthy is not a condition. It is an identity. This distinction is the architectural flaw in the foundation of the high-functioning repressor. You don't walk into a boardroom worrying that people won't like your presentation. You walk in worrying that they will see you. You are managing a core belief that says, if I am truly seen, I will be rejected. Let's look at this through the lens of John Bowlby, the father of attachment theory. Bowlby posited that our early bonds form the blueprint for every relationship we will ever have. When those bonds are warm, the child creates a blueprint of the world that says, I am safe to explore. But when those bonds are cold or inconsistent, the blueprint changes. It becomes a map of threat detection. If you grew up in this environment, you didn't develop a personality based on flourishing. You developed a personality based on survival. You became an expert at reading micro expressions. You learned to sense a shift in your parents' mood before they even spoke. This brings us to a paradox that likely defines your adult life. You are probably incredibly empathetic. You are the friend everyone calls. You are the manager who knows exactly what the team needs. You view this as your superpower, but here is the uncomfortable truth. That empathy was not a gift. It was a survival mechanism. You learned to read others because your safety depended on predicting the weather in the house. You became a master of perception because you had to be. The tragedy and the exhaustion comes from the fact that you are still running this high-stakes software in low-stakes environments. You are reading your spouse's silence as a prelude to abandonment. You are reading your boss's neutral email as a confirmation of failure. Your amygdala, The brain's fear center is stuck in the on position, flooding your system with cortisol, trying to solve a problem that ended 30 years ago. Now, why is this so hard to diagnose in ourselves? Why do so many successful adults walk around with this wound without naming it? It's because of the specific type of gaslighting that occurs in good families. The hated child is not always the beaten child. Often, the hated child is the one who is fed, clothed, and educated, but emotionally starved. In these families, on paper, everything looks perfect. There are family photos, there are accolades, there is laughter, but you felt an invisible wall. Maybe it was comparison. Your sibling was the easy one, the smart one, the athlete, and you were the difficult one, the sensitive one. This invisibility is actually more damaging than open hostility. When a parent screams at you, you have a concrete event to point to. You can say, that was wrong. But when a parent simply looks through you or treats your emotions as a tedious administrative burden, you have no evidence. So you turn the lens inward. You think, my parents are good people, so the problem must be me. You gaslight yourself to protect the image of your family. You fracture your own reality to maintain the bond. This self-blame is the engine of the high-functioning adult. It drives you to overperform. You think, if I can just be perfect enough, if I can just earn enough, if I can just fix enough, I will finally be indispensable. And if I am indispensable, I cannot be rejected. This brings us to the masks you wear today. Psychologists call these compensatory strategies. They are the elaborate suits of armor we build to hide the unworthy child. For many of you, the mask is perfectionism. You believe that flawless execution is the rent you pay for occupying space on this planet. You cannot make a mistake because a mistake isn't just an error, it's a breach of contract. It confirms the suspicion that you are defective. For others, the mask is the fixer. You become the person who has no needs but meets everyone else's. You become the low-maintenance partner, the reliable employee. You smother your own needs because you learned early on that having needs was dangerous. And for some, the mask is rebellion. You decided to reject the world before it could reject you. You push people away. You test them. You armor yourself in cynicism. But underneath the perfectionist, the fixer, and the rebel, the wound is identical. I was not accepted as I am. You are living a life of performance, and performance is exhausting. It is a metabolic tax that you pay every single hour of every single day. Why does this matter now? You're an adult. You have your own life. Why dig this up? Because silence creates repetition. The brain is a pattern-matching machine. It gravitates toward what it knows, even when what it knows is painful. Freud called this repetition compulsion. Without awareness, the hated child grows up to marry the withholding partner. You find the spouse who makes you work for their affection, just like your mother did. You find the boss who is critical and distant, just like your father was. You are unconsciously trying to win a game that was rigged from the start, hoping that this time, if you just try hard enough, you can turn the rejection into love. You are trying to retroactively heal your childhood by breaking your heart in your adulthood, and this echoes into your own parenting. Many of you are terrified of damaging your own children. You swing the pendulum to the other extreme, hovering, over-validating, terrified that a single moment of frustration will traumatize them. But that anxiety is just the other side of the same coin. It is still the trauma running the show. So, how do we stop the machine? How do we rewrite a blueprint that is etched into our neural pathways? The first step is moving from condition to awareness. You have to stop viewing your anxiety, your people-pleasing, and your exhaustion as personality traits. They are not who you are. They are what happened to you. You have to look at the emotional janitor you've become and realize, I am cleaning up messes I didn't make. Science offers us a path here. We used to believe the brain was fixed in adulthood. We now know, thanks to neuroplasticity, that the brain can be rewired. Attachment styles are not life sentences. You can develop what psychologists call earned secure attachment. This process is often called reparenting. It sounds soft, but it is actually rigorous, structural work. It involves treating yourself with the compassion you were denied. This is difficult for the hated child. Compassion feels foreign. Criticism feels familiar. When you make a mistake, your internal monologue likely sounds exactly like the atmosphere of that dinner table. Sharp, unforgiving, cold. Reparenting means interrupting that voice. It means looking at the adult you are, tired, trying, imperfect, and saying, you are allowed to be tired. You are allowed to make a mistake. You are safe. It implies setting boundaries. This is the hardest part. Healing does not require you to keep drinking poison. just because it's served by family. You may need to draw lines to protect your nervous system. You cannot heal in the same environment that made you sick. But there is a deeper, more philosophical shift that needs to happen. You need to move from being a victim of circumstance to being the author of your future. Kierkegaard wrote that despair is the sickness of not being able to be oneself. The hated child spent decades being someone else, the quiet one, the good one, the convenient one. The cure for this despair is the courage to finally exist. This brings us to the reveals hidden within your trauma. Because while this injury runs deep, it also forged capabilities that normal people do not possess. Your vigilance has made you astute. Your hunger for belonging has made you loyal. Your experience of the cold has made you capable of immense warmth. The hated child often becomes the visionary, the leader, the artist, because they were forced to look at the world from the outside in. You see things others miss because you had to. The goal of healing isn't to erase the past. It is to integrate it. It is to take that sensitivity, that drive, that perception, and use it for your thriving, not just your survival. Let's return to that initial image. The child at the dinner table, staring at their plate, hoping to disappear. That child is still in there. They are still waiting for permission to speak. They are still waiting for someone to look at them with delight, not disdain. The tragedy of your childhood was that the people who were supposed to give you that look couldn't do it. But the opportunity of your adulthood is that you can. You can be the one to look at that child and say, you are not too much. You are not a burden. You are just a child. You can tell them the truth that was withheld for decades. You exist, and therefore, you matter. The cycle of the hated child ends the moment you decide to stop hating the parts of yourself that were rejected. It ends when you stop trying to earn your place in the world and simply claim it. You are not an intruder. You are not an interruption. You are the architect of what comes next. And this time, you get to draw the blueprint.